All right, guys, welcome back this week. Richard's joining us again. We've got 3 mics. I got
the fluffy one.
So the cat got a hold of this one at some point, and then I lost it, and I had backups, which I've then since lost.
So you put a mouse instead?
Well, I found this. It came with the microphones, and it looks like some Dr. Seuss shit.
I thought it was going to be a cat's toy. You're like, oh, well, I found a cat's toy.
If the cat sees you, you're dead.
That's why I shut the door. Cause
So she's going to, in the middle of the podcast.
I basically do. It's like, it looks like, for those of you listening, those
That'd
things
be painful.
where it's on a rope with a stick, it looks like that you flip around to play with the cat. I got that strapped to my chest, which is
if the cat jumps, that would be painful. Yeah.
So Richard joined us this week. We want to talk about something we teased last week, which was some of the training Richard's been doing with some of the fighters here, kickboxers, MMA fighters, boxers, and how the principles that you use and how that goes, because it's been really cool to watch.
What's the StrongFit Principles, Tyler?
Well,
explain them again.
Start from the beginning.
One more time.
It's been really cool. So I got super lucky. So I think the boxer that I started, I kind of consult a little bit and kind of help him out. He's out in Munich, Alex, and Andy, who's one of our mentees in the mentoring program.
You might remember Andy from, he was from a bonus episode around 15A. If you're on YouTube on the playlist, it should be there.
Yeah, about finding your hamstrings. And so basically we started working with Alex at a point where we were talking about, energy systems being bullshit depending on the stress being imposed and being in the state versus completing the action. And so I took that to heart and I started training Alex. Well, I did a couple sessions with him where, basically it was consensual, but it was basically waterboarding. So I had a wet towel. And so I said, we're going to make sure that you want to be a fighter, because he came to me, he wants to be a world champion, and I believe he can be. And so I have this very intuitive sense of making people
miserable.
I find the gaps in their ability to handle stress, shall we say.
Yeah, that's a good way to define it.
And so I set up this workout and I came up to him and he was in really good shape. So physically, and this is something I'm noticing with a lot of these martial artists, is they're very good at finding their game and being able to zone out, meaning they're very good at acquiring the skill necessary to be able to not be there and complete the skill completely, right? The task completely.
To just kick ass on autopilot.
Exactly. Especially in exercise.
That's the flow within fighting.
So I think especially within training, the dude could keep 350 watts on the bike and he would just not even be there. Yeah. Nasal breathing the whole time, just very good at doing what he needed to get done to complete the workout. And so I came with the towel, and so I started looking at very specific things that he would do for me to see that he was zoning out. And I'd come with the towel and I would force him to not breathe. And if he would breathe in, he would breathe in water and it would just be a disgusting mess. And so we did this kind of
waterboarding.
a little bit. And
that is definitely waterboarding.
Yeah. But he agreed to the experiment.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting thing because I induced so much stress that we did a mock fight, if you will, within training. So a fight gone bad type thing. So 12 rounds, 3 minutes, 1 minute per exercise. Certain things had to be kept into. So the constraints were you can't hold your breath, you can't mouth breathe, and you can't zone out. So you have to embrace the pain and you have to want to be here. If not, you get waterboarded, because if you don't want to be in a fight, you're gonna get punched in the face. Yeah. It is what it is. Yeah. And so by round 3, and so we played with the ghost, which is I think something that we talked. I don't know if you talked about it on the podcast, but we talked a lot. We make a lot of methods, and they just sit in the back burner.
Yeah, I think once. The ghost at least once.
So we're playing with the ghost, and so I said, you get 4 of these things to the face, and it's a knockout. If you get knocked down 3 times, the 4th one, questionable if you're going to get back up. And so we played with that one, and so the first one came, and he was just kind of round 1 zoning out already. So then he was like, whoa. By round 4, he'd figured out how to stay in it a little bit better, but he had 2 knockdowns left. He had 1 knockdown left. I knocked him down twice with the towel. And it was super interesting to see him wanting to really be there. And then out of nowhere, he just kind of zoned out. So I went, whoosh, and I just held his face for a good 5 seconds on the bike. And I said, you better start fucking pushing if you really want to be a champion. And he started going harder, and he was trying to back away. And he when you're 5 years old and your mom pulls out the belt type thing or starts yelling at you, and you have that little, or you get yelled at in school, and you have the quivering lip. like you want to be a man, but you still like are gonna bawl your eyes out type thing. And I'm not being sexist. You want to be a woman as well. Like you want to be that person that's not gonna be faced to fear.
It's all good.
Yeah. So he had that, and I said, you have 5 seconds. So we did like a slow 5-second count. So it'd be a 10-second count to get up from the fight. And I was like, do you want to be a fucking champion or do you not? And if you don't, that's cool, but don't waste my time as I'm trying to do these things. You're the only one that gets to decide how far you want to be, your level of investment. And something switched there, and he didn't get knocked down the whole time. So then I got bored. So then I was like, damn it. He literally for like the next 3 rounds, so up to round 7, he was just going. And I was like, this is getting boring because now you're getting too good at it. So I would just come randomly with the towel and he'd be like, but rather than walking away, he would like embrace the towel. He's like, bring it. And he was just straight through for the remainder of the rounds. And so I just from there, I was like, I like training fighters.
You see that in almost, I guess that's the downside of the way we all train when it comes to, for example, in jiu-jitsu, like you're only good, it's an autopilot game. Like in the sense of when you train, you don't have time to think, your body has to react for you, and then, because it's small, like stuff like that. So if you start to think, usually it's too slow. The downside of that is you might not be always present.
Well, and that's the thing is like, so if you sacrifice that presentness and then something gets like real fucked up, you know what I'm saying?
That's the problem in competition.
You get smashed, and there's too many variables.
In training, you can relax.
You control the game a lot more.
Yeah, plus when you tap, it's training.
Yeah.
So now, therefore, in competition, suddenly there's a game going, like there's a ghost, like a true playing the ghost happening, and that can throw off your game plan completely because you cannot be in autopilot anymore, and now you're fucked. So now you have no setup. This is something I was thinking about this morning, actually, before we go back to your stuff, is what John Danaher. So John Danaher is a guy out of the Renzo Gracie School in New York who's changing the game. His people are just submitting everybody. His number one guy is Gordon Ryan, who just submitted, I think about everybody. They were supposed to be like, who's number one between the two dudes lately, and he just whooped the guy for like fucking 10 minutes and just got a heel hook again and done. But what he got with was a system. Like, this is how you enter in the leg. This is how you do this, and then you do that, and then within that, the flow. And the difference from the Brazilians. The Brazilian came, and it's, like it's the chaos of Brazil and everything. But what they got out of the chaos was the flow. Like, you go in and jiu-jitsu is all flow. So then they go from position to position, and they're awesome at that. The downside to that is they have no system in place. So when the shit hits the fan, they don't have a strategy. When I go one A, B, C, D, so A, he makes that movement, I go to B, and then I have 3 options. And then if he chooses that one, I get there. So, because that's what the guys at John Danaher do. So they have a spider web. Yeah. And then eventually you're going to fall into one of their traps. Right? But that's but to do that, you have to have a strategy and drill that and stuff like that, which goes almost completely against the idea of the Brazilian, which was completely chaotic, of just train all day, 6 hours a day, and flow. And then you learn every single possible situation. And so you have those 2 systems. And what you see is the best way to do it is the strategy, the stuff, but within the flow. Right. And so I think going back to training is when you have guys that just do the flow, they're always on autopilot. Yeah. They just rely on doing a lot to see in every situation. But when they are really truly put into stress, then you see that strategy failing, which is what you see with fighters, I think.
Having seen a few of Richard's sessions with some of the guys too, it's really, the thing that I enjoy the most is I see, one, you're training guys who they want to be not good. These guys want to be great, which means when you're watching those training sessions, and we'll have some content and stuff about it that you guys will see, but it is very much a different thing than coaching somebody who wants to just get a little better. You can tell in the language that you're using in this, in every moment. It's like, like you trying to be good? No. So then pick this fucking thing up and go. And then you don't get to run away from it either. You don't get to zone out. You have to be present. On the other side, opposite side of the flow thing is if you get too stressed and then panic in a fight, you're just going to get your fucking head locked up.
So miserable couple rounds.
And on top of it, like if you become so stiff, even in your strategy, then for example, you'll see people that don't take chances anymore because they don't want to lose, which is not the same thing as winning.
Because then you're not
winning
attacking.
is not losing, right? Yeah. And so that's a problem. Then you see people that are so stressed, their strategy becomes obvious. then you can't win either because the guy will see you coming from a mile away, because that flow, that autopilot allows the instinct to take over, and then sometimes you find holes. Your body does it before your mind realizes that you just move within the position. Yeah. To do that, you have to be in flow. Yeah. And so that's the hard part between the two.
I want to go to some of the specifics before we pull back to some of the bigger concepts.
Yeah.
Like, what about from the strength training side of this with these guys, the structure?
Right, because you had the boxer.
Because there's specifically with...
So you had the boxer, but then you get the MMA guys and the kickboxers.
Yeah, so I, as a strength and conditioning aspect, is the biggest fear that all fighters, and I think any sports specialist has within their sport, is when they view strength and conditioning, it's back squats, power cleans, it's all bilateral weightlifting movements, which is not what they need necessarily. Yeah. That is a skilled sport in itself.
Right.
And so the first thing I did is I took that away. Mm-hmm. We don't do any barbell work.
How big of let's go into this for a second. How big of a problem was that? Because what did they say when they came to see you? So they say, you tell them you need to get stronger. What did they say?
Yeah.
Because people need to know how bad this is.
I don't want to be stiff. I don't want to get big. I don't want to be bulky. I need to be fast.
Sounds like women.
Right? But it's basically, and it's a huge fear. And so like what I've noticed is all these guys, I mean, like the kickboxer, he's been doing kickboxing for 10 years. And for strength training, he's been doing kickboxing for 10 years. And for conditioning, he's been doing kickboxing for 10 years.
Yeah. So the imbalances that are going to come from training
well, just the imbalances
when they play sports,
spin out of control.
And they don't get better at, there's no accessory work that I can see of. I mean, there's no, I have another guy, a younger guy, and the dude is just a fucking warrior. But even Dave goes like, he moves like shit. But he's an amazing fighter. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't want to change. I mean, I want him to evolve as a fighter, but in order for him to evolve as a fighter, he needs to move a little bit better in certain positions, because then the kicking, the striking will get stronger. Yeah. And there'll be less pain.
What we see is they have such imbalances. Mm-hmm. They are weak in certain places. But you take a fighter and you say strength and conditioning is we're going to do powerlifting or we're going to do CrossFit. Yeah. Both are sports. Yeah. If I say I need conditioning, I do. I'm not going to say let me get better at soccer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, let me go play soccer in a club and do soccer drills, because then my conditioning will improve for jiu-jitsu. You'd be like, dude, just start do. That's not how this works, right? And yet, this is how they see the strength game, which means they come in and this is, powerlifting, bodybuilding, or CrossFit. So they go, well, get stronger means what? Means starting to deadlift, like John Jones, the MMA, lightweight champion, who started to sumo deadlifts 585. And I was like, why?
For what? Yeah.
For what? What? You don't need a 585 sumo deadlift for MMA. Like, I think that we'll agree on. But then suddenly they use that to say, see, strength training is bad. I'm like, you're not doing strength training. You're doing powerlifting. Yeah. That's a sport. Stop using a sport to get better at your sport. No. Yes, it doesn't work. No shit. Yeah. And so what we saw is also guys that don't want to train when they lift weight to failure, because they think failure will give them big, stiff muscle, just like bodybuilders. Because they see videos of bodybuilders training and they go, those guys go to failure and they get those huge muscles stiff out of that. So therefore...
And joint pain and...
Right. Therefore, if I take it to failure, I'm going to look like a bodybuilder. And I'm like, this is a conversation I'm trying to have with Yaya about just because you do some squats won't give you the legs of that girl that you see who's been doing it for 15 years, trying to get huge legs, and is taking steroids on top of it. Can we please stop the comparison? This is just a stupid comparison.
But like, you see that on one side, and then on the other side, you have these strength and conditioning coaches that just want to complicate the shit out of everything, and gets people nowhere but injured, because now the skill's too high, the eccentric's too high, there's bands tied up to places, and like I have this Instagram ad thing where there were, I think they were out of Minnesota or somewhere in the Midwest, and they're these like top strength and conditioning sports specialists.
I love those.
And they're doing banded split snatches onto a box. So you start with the bar, there's bands in the back, and you go into a snatch, and one foot needs to land on top of the box into a split snatch.
Oh, Jesus Christ, how the fuck do you do that?
Like, how do you not expect to get hurt from that?
How do you expect to get anything out of that? How even do you do that? Now I want to see. But
But so they're
how we came up with that shit?
that's the only way that's where I see people that just want the quick nickels, because they're like, people are like, ooh, that looks really complicated. It's going to make me better.
I think you can approach somebody who is maybe at a loss though too. Like, you know, I think nowadays the information is out there that I think people, fighters specifically, they know we got to do a little bit of, there needs to be some structural work, because if you're in the game, well, I think generally if you're in the game long enough, you will realize where your progress stalls. That's why these guys do seem to be training and buying in pretty
Let me
hard.
tell you, from being in that world for a very long time, MMA and grappling has the worst strength and conditioning people, not the coaches, but just IQ I've ever seen in my life out of all the sports that I've seen.
And I think though when they turn to the idea that they need to do strength training, what happens is you can get took by complexity. They can get taken by the fact that somebody offers all this stuff.
But you know what happens is they do powerlifting, they get hurt obviously because they try to back squat. And you know, fighters, by the way, there's also something we need to say is fighters have usually a huge ego. There's a reason they're trying to take somebody's head off and actually enjoy it. It's because they have somewhat of an ego and everything. Whenever you say squat, for them it's, I'm going to go to my max, I'm going to beat everybody in the gym. That's why I think they like to gravitate toward other sports, is because they need to beat someone. They can't train for themselves. Their whole training is beating someone. And so that shows into their lifting as well, where they need to beat someone. So that's why they go towards sports, and that's why powerlifting, they go, 120, how much did you squat? Oh, I'm going to go. And then they get hurt, and then from there they go into complexity, into Olympic weightlifting. And let me tell you right now, snatching for a grappler is by far the worst single exercise you can do. Your shoulders are getting grinded to shit doing jiu-jitsu, because there's always a guy trying to tweak it the wrong way. If you think you can go and snatch heavy weights after, just because Georges St-Pierre did it does not mean it's a good idea. To me, it's the worst idea possible.
And what Richard's been doing, though, it seems as though it is the most simplistic, fundamental version of what it is. You take it back to the real basics, low West, so it's low risk, a lot where you're building.
Yeah, it's look at the person you're working with and see what they need. So I have a dude like this dude. You guys will see more of him. He has a fight coming up, so I won't give up too much. But like the stuff that I'm within 3 weeks, his body adapts. Like we did a session on Wednesday. And this Sunday, and I was like, dude, I can't even destroy you that much anymore. Like his recovery, I'm looking at the guy, I'm like, you're gonna be a beast. Like I see him in 2 years being at the top, because he's already genetically freakishly tall and moves very, very aggressively and explosively.
He needs 10 kilos of muscle.
And I mean, look at his arms just from doing rope pulls and the carries and stuff. And his biceps have already grown like 2-3 centimeters. It's ridiculous. So genetic freak as it is, fast, right?
Sorry, not everybody has that.
But just seeing the small things that were missing when he came to see me, and I was like, okay, so where do you feel your weaknesses and so on and so forth? And I approached him not in trying to fix his weakness by doing his weakness. I approached his weakness by getting the right muscles that are part of the weakened part of the chain to get stronger. And the coach is saying, dude, he's hitting stronger, he's hitting faster, he's recovering faster. Like,
let's go through that one. Let's use him as an example. So he gets in. He obviously needs to get stronger. Right. So let's see that for all fighters. When we see them, usually they're just not strong.
Right.
Not everywhere. There's always massive imbalances in strength. You see them, some like grapplers usually are good at pulling because they can, so their lift will be okay. But the second you get them into pressing, so there's issues and stuff like that. Boxers are more pushers. They suck at pulling. So you see a posterior chain issue, stuff like that, they need to get stronger. That does not mean deadlift. To make them stronger and stuff like that, you mostly use sandbags, sleds, right? Because low waist, low skill, little beat up on the joints, little stress directly onto the spine outside of the sandbags. And it builds, and as you said, it builds the body as a chain. So we don't do that much isolation, because unless there's a major issue, we do very little isolation, because you need for the stuff to work. And we can't train them 5 days a week going into a small muscle, going into a larger chain, and then that's when you're injured coming back from an injury. But at some point, we need to train them in a way that makes the body work as a unit.
And in a way that I think seeing Richard's training them, it makes those sessions count. Meaning
Yeah,
you
for
only
sure.
get
Because you only get
couple
1 or 2 a
sessions
week. Yeah, exactly.
And so
Yeah.
why fuck around? You're trying to go through these extreme ranges of motion with loads that are not very significant.
And
or
so much shit, by the way.
Strap them to a fucking sled and put in.
Right.
Yeah.
Because,
And
and
I
by the
think
way,
that's-
soreness is a part. Like if you do those deadlift stuff, they'll be their back will be sore as shit for 3 days. They can't do that because then you grapple the next day, you get hurt.
And then you've made them.
So that was, that was really the biggest thing. Is so they came in and they all have fights beginning of November. So I was like, cool. I'm not making any crazy changes
Yep.
because the fight is coming, and I can't have you fucked up mentally or physically.
Yeah.
So it was basically, I'm going to start to slowly build the structural muscles, so you have the least amount of risk injury when you're in the ring, whether that's the neck tweaking, whatever it may be. And so when I look at the fighters, I do my stress test. So, like the boxer trying to figure out where he was mentally. And my approach is always, how much do they need on the hardware side, looking at the muscles and range of motion mobility, how much on the software side, the nervous system, the adaptation to stress. And from there, then I start to play around. Right now, it's mainly all hardware, a little bit of software. So like we do a lot of playing against the ghosts. We do the 8 count. So every single time I push them hard, right? So I want a shit ton of intensity with maybe 50 seconds rest, which if you look at a fight, it's just a shit ton of intensity, especially the kickboxer. You have 2 rounds to get the knockout.
Yeah.
And so you go in hard, you push, and then you kind of pace a little bit. And so basically that's what the sled or anything that I do with them kind of encourages. And anytime that he stops or rests or anything like that, I give him an 8 count, and I'm creating a very specific protocol for him to how to recover in those 8 seconds. So if you get knocked down, which nobody wants to get knocked down, but if you get knocked down and you need to get back up, how do you recover in 8 seconds? What is the best way for you to come back? It's not for everybody. And so for him, I have a very specific now 8 count where he knows exactly what to do on the first second, second. And yes, I didn't just give him knock him out but I get him to a point where the body's just not responding. And you can yell whatever you want at him and he's just not there. And so if he's not there, basically I just grab him by the nose, and then as soon as he can't breathe, goes, what the
Can I explain something there? People don't understand, because people think fighters are super conditioned. But once you get punched, once you get knocked down or whatever, it's half your cardio goes away. Yeah. This is a reality that very, very few people have ever experienced. But no matter how conditioned you are, the problem is the second you get in trouble, your cardio seems to go away. Like when you get knocked down, then you can't breathe anymore. It's the weirdest thing. So that's a very specific type of cardio, is being able to come back cardio-wise after you got rocked. Oh, that's a hard one.
And I think having watched this is a horrifying way to train, by the way. It is.
I don't know anybody that would be able to survive their training sessions.
That is the measure of having seen that. That's how you can tell that these guys aren't trying to be good. They're trying to be great.
Yeah. And
nobody fucking.
And
says
that's the thing. Is they've been in a fight when it happens. Once you've been there, it's like being tired in a jiu-jitsu fight. Oh man, it's the worst place in the world. You'll quit on that alone. And
so that's where I have that's the kickboxer, and then you have the MMA guy, which is totally different, because MMA you don't get 10 seconds, you don't get 8 seconds. If you get fucked, you're fucked, and the dude will just
steamroll.
So with my MMA fighters, as soon as he starts to slow down, I just start smacking him. I'm like, this isn't going to get easier if you slow down. So with him, I have different tactics where it's a fight for 5 minutes, and you need to find your places to attack and defend. And so as soon as he just starts to keeps defending and defending, then I just go ape shit on him. So I always just say, keep the pace, and who's keeping the pace, and so
weaponized pace.
Yeah. And so it's a very short time. So after this fight, then we have a whole time where we're going to build the structure and the mental side of it as well. But it's a really fun thing to be able to play with dudes that understand what it's like to be in the ring, to have it's such a unique sport, and it's such a hunting sport, and so you can't just be you can't be following the pace of, so you can't play defense in any sort of fight.
If you follow somebody's pace, you're fucked.
Yeah, and so it's been a really fun mental and physical game to approach MMA fighters and kickboxers totally different, and being able to understand, I watch their fight, so I know exactly when they start to lose it. And so as soon as they start doing that in training, I can see it right away, and I attack. And it's basically that, because when you're in the ring, sorry, they will attack. They do want to chop your head off.
You're doing that while making sure they're fixing imbalances.
Yeah, absolutely.
While making sure they're getting stronger in the right places, and staying safe.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's been cool too, some of the tools you use that have been, say like sandbags in general.
Yeah.
heavy sandbag carries, rolling around, having a sandbag on your belly, trying to roll it over, lift it up, get up, carrying a sandbag.
That mimics grappling.
When you're fucking dying.
awesome.
You know, especially after I've seen Richard just break dudes on sleds and surprise them, by the way, with the fact that now carry a sandbag and take it 400 meters.
Well, I have that MMA fighter. So if he's not setting the pace, I have a 150 kilo sandbag on one side and 160 on the other. So no matter what side of the gym he's at, he's going to get. And as soon as I see him setting the pace, as soon as he's done just absolutely dying a burn the question sled session, like as soon as he's done pulling or pushing, I'm like, lay the fuck down, and I put the 160 kilo sandbag and I start moving it around. And I'm like, do you enjoy being here? Because that's what happens when you set the fuck, like we do. I have a lot of mental games. But so we are fixing imbalances. So it's
no, but you have two systems. You have, as you say, hardware, software. There's the hardware where we have to fix imbalances, making them stronger, making sure they don't break while training and everything. Then the software, which is, all right, let's stress the fuck out of you so that when the shit becomes real, you can actually use it. Well, and that's something that is hard when you see people that do either CrossFit or powerlifting or bodybuilding for fighting, is you can't always use what you've just gained into your fighting game.
Right.
And I think by keeping the tools and everything very simple and based purely, you have software and you have your hardware stuff, is you're leaving the fighting to the fighting coaches.
Yeah.
Also,
which is,
by the way, exactly what they fucking want.
Yes.
They don't want some strength person coming in telling them their shit,
mimicking
fucking
movements.
up their athletes, mirroring movements with extra load,
mimicking, which do nothing. Like, you know what kills me the most is when I see people working on their punching by using weights.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, slow them down on the technique, please,
Teach me
because
to
that's
move
exactly what they need. They need to be slow.
Well, and if we're talking about that, then you start seeing, I mean, if you look at all fighters, and I'm sure that if you're a fighter yourself, you have one weaker side than the other, depending which is the dominant.
Yeah.
And so you have one weaker oblique and a bigger mid back on that one side. So if you're mimicking that movement, you're still incorporating a horrible
movement pattern.
and a horrible movement pattern, the wrong tension all the way through until the back starts to go or the neck starts to go, which is what I'm seeing with all these kickboxers and fighters, is they're here. Yeah. So as soon as
they
we
don't have this.
As soon as we get this to work, like now they're actually able to stay present and this doesn't get tired. So as soon as they go for the hook, they can hit harder because now the neck doesn't need to be up. So now the chest and the teres major can actually work.
And you can still have your shoulder in the right place. You just don't need to shrug all the time.
So again, it goes back to tension over precision.
Right, but just putting it out there. Right. It's that position over tension, that because they teach boxing, you know, like your hands are a certain way, which at first is very necessary, but then at some point, no one talks about tension in the pecs, the lats, you know, where just to keep tension. When you block, you don't want to be here. Yeah. Like there's a number of things like that you don't see in strength and conditioning. All I see is very complex movement, sports, and specific percentages where there's a structural work that needs to be there for fighters that no one seems to really address. You very, very rarely see fighters do carries. You know who does it? The wrestlers, the Cuban wrestlers. Their whole strength and conditioning starts with carries, except they take one in each other, which is the worst. That's what I was doing in Brazil. It's the worst training session ever. On the sand with a guy on your back, it's horrible. But you, outside of the Cuban system, which was exceptional for wrestling, you see in today's world, you see very few fighters doing carries, for example, which is crazy. Obviously, carries, you can tell from a structural perspective, is gonna carry over to wrestling, to kickboxing, where you need to squeeze someone, and yet you don't see any of that. And no, that doesn't mean do the sport of strongmen. That's not what we're saying either. Yeah. The idea is get stronger through lowest exercises. Sandbags, especially the sled, the rope pulls. By the way, the same way you're training your sprinters.
Yeah.
Isn't that real?
Yeah.
Did anybody notice?
That's how you know the principles are true.
That is training a guy who's over 2 meters tall, kickboxer, the same way he's training an MMA guy who's 5'10", the same way he's training a 5'7" sprinter who weighs half the weight of the kickboxer.
Like you say, the tone is all the same. It's just the voice in which I coach. Because if I were to talk to Janina or any of the other
that's another problem. Yeah,
like I do with my kickboxers, I would either get roundhouse kicked or stabbed, or
she stabbed you.
Yeah,
she stabbed you.
You know what I mean? So the tone is always going to be the same. The voice in which you coach and you care for the person is always going to be different.
And you apply the exercises differently.
Yeah.
With Janina, you will with your kickboxer, but the principles are always the same.
Yeah.
So It's the same exercises you use, really. Even for the psoas stuff.
Yeah.
Didn't your kickboxer have a psoas problem too?
Massive.
I mean,
As soon as I fix that, the
kicking
the
better.
left kick is no longer an issue, and
right, which is, by the way, but you fixed
Hip
the
issues
right
and
psoas on
everything.
Janina so she can sprint better. Did you use the same exercises to fix it? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So you adapted the stress based on the person,
Yeah.
but the idea is the same. We are using the same exercises for everyone. From a tall black dude over 2 meters tall who weighs like 230
Yeah.
to a tiny 160 kilo sprinter.
And by saying we use the same exercise, there was no sets and reps. It's me making sure the tension is being applied correctly.
Tension over position.
There's also something interesting
Because then
that
people are gonna be like fucking.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. My hip
Yeah.
still hurts. Yeah. Well, no shit.
it's also been interesting noticing how with sprinters and with the fighters, there's speed demands that come into play. And I've seen it with with Janino, where we'll have her on a sled, and there's times where it'll go and it's like, oh, she's just flying. You get to the end, and I forget that we're not just trying to wear people down.
Yeah.
So she'll get all the way to the end, and then finally die out like only like the last meter or two. And in my head, I'm like, oh, we could put more weight on next time, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then you guys are both, and you're right. The answer is like, I don't need her to move slow. Like that's perfect.
Yeah.
That was max effort. We found just enough of the breaking point. I don't need her slogging through 20 meters of that stuff.
But let me explain why.
Yeah.
The reason with Janina, because she has a problem, is her feet, her ankles are as strong that she did through the drilling. Her feet are very strong. What we noticed is that she runs up instead of forward.
Mm-hmm.
So when she started doing the sled, you could see that she could not apply. She's very, very strong. She squatted 130 kilos.
Nice.
Like at 17 or something like that. So it's just one of those ridiculously gifted people, right? But when she pushed the sled, she could not go faster than Yaya, barely, because she could not transfer the power.
Because it had to go forward.
Because on the sled, you can't go up, you have to go forward. So there was no transfer of power, which is what her coach told me, or technical coach, like her sprint coach told me, like she cannot run forward, she can only run up. So we're like, all right, so we see the same issue. Then suddenly it was like, all right, you have to make the sled move faster. Because you could see she was hitting the feet super hard and doing everything looking good. She was bouncing, well, I'm like, but you're not doing shit.
Yeah.
That sled is not moving fast. You're just looking the part, but you're not being the part. Stop going up and down, and I don't want to hear your feet anymore.
Yeah.
Because now you're focusing on hearing your own feet and doing everything like you think is right, but in the meantime, the sled is not moving.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I don't want to hear your feet anymore. I want you to push the sled faster. Not you, the sled. The sled has to move faster. So if we had done heavier, she would have done that. She would have gone back to hammering the feet and making it look like it's an exercise and yet not doing shit with it. Yeah. There's that problem too with some athletes that are so good at drilling that they become master at drilling, but they don't run any faster, or they don't compete any better, or they don't get any stronger. They just becomes master of the drills they're doing. We see that a lot. Yeah. And you have to take them out of that. And for her as a sprinter, it was move the sled faster. And now that Richard has her as an athlete, because she switched to him, like he's working on the psoas and stuff like that, but it's the same idea. I'm not asking you to move your leg. I'm asking you to find your psoas. Yeah. It's not the same thing. But that's the same issue I had with, I'm not asking you to stomp your feet. I'm asking you to move the sled. So based on that, I could not go too heavy. I was like, I need that sled to fly. Yeah. Not you, the sled.
Yeah, the context in which you guys are applying the things is very interesting to see. And like Richard said, it's like, I need to look at them, who they are as a fighter, who they are as a person, what you want to be. If this is you're not going to coach a person who's doing some kickboxing for fitness, and you're not going to waterboard them, or you might once.
Well, depending on how much you get on my nerves. I won't.
You might once, but then they might not be back.
But everybody has very, like I was saying yesterday, like I have very interesting. I have like these spectrums of clients, and so like I have a client that reached to me with all these pains and aches and everything, but at the end of the day, just wants to look good naked when summer comes. I was like, hey, fuck yeah, let's do that. Yeah. You know,
I can't disagree with that either.
Yeah, and I have other people that are, literally their only option that any doctor is giving them is surgery, and I'm like, okay, so then let's have a look.
You're not going to waterboard those either.
Yeah, so now we need to see what it is that is going on within you and your system, and do you need surgery, do you not need surgery? Like, go get more options. Like, that's not my place to say yes or no. You need more options, and then we can take a look and luckily I have a few doctor friends that we
But
can send things.
even if you do surgery, you're going to come back to see me anyway
some
because you're going
point.
to need to build those
Something,
muscles.
yeah.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
muscles needs to be built. Like, let's be honest, most people have just major imbalances where they like muscles
Right.
in specific stuff. How we get to building those muscles is where we are different from most. People will do the bullshit exercises, the isolation that doesn't do anything past 6 weeks, where we're trying to build within a chain.
Yeah.
And so we use exercises that are far more compound based than most.
That concept too of the chain, developing the whole chain, is you're developing the system with which the system needs to then be used going forward. Meaning you're building a
Right.
system for them that works in the context of their life.
Yeah.
Same thing what you're doing with the fighters.
Well, everything that we do is being able to be transferred towards other skills. A lot of the shit that people are putting out there, that is the skill. There's nothing that it can be transferred over to.
Yeah.
Like that was that dude that had the 200 and something kilo clean and jerk and couldn't pick up the 110 kilo sandbag. You're like, what? Then what is all this skill strength that you have?
Let's be honest. But
Is that what it was?
Yeah, 210.
No, but we had the dude, deadlifter. He was,
he was
780
No,
pound
he was
deadlift or
way over
something.
7.
Yeah.
And he could not pick up
Off the ground.
Off the ground. He was like, no, fuck it, because he was stiff leg. He was
Yeah.
like, no, I don't do that.
Yeah.
But no, we could tell. He tried, and he was like, no.
So that's where you start to see everything we do, it transfers over to whatever skill you want, right? And so that's really the biggest thing when I work with whatever variation of client it is what is it that you want it to transfer over to? And I don't care what that is. I just need to know so that I'm not taking you this direction. You go, no, I wanted that. It's like, okay. It's like, I want to be healthy, but I want McDonald's. Okay.
You know, the biggest difference between a sport and training that I see is a sport has to be done in autopilot. So you're training your autopilot system to be as effective as possible. That's what a sport is.
It has to be second nature.
It has to be, an autopilot. Whereas training is the opposite of that. It has to be somewhere you don't want to go.
Yeah.
And be present in a place where you don't want to be.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we do the best is like, you see where they go autopilot and you go, no. This is where we're going to be and I need you to be present here. Like Janina with the sled. I was like, no, you're on autopilot on your drilling your feet now. That's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to move that sled fast and be present within it. What did we see with CrossFitters? Autopilot, endure the pain, and go all their traps. I'm like, and now it's like you can do that in competition, but in training, I need you to take the pain into a place you don't want to go.
Yeah.
And I need you to stay there and to be present while you do that. So the opposite of the autopilot. And I think that's the biggest difference between a sport and a training session. And that's why I think fighters suck at training.
Yeah.
Because they've learned the flow, they've learned the autopilot, and now that's all they can give you in training. And Richard is taking them away from that. And it's a rape mentally from having to stay in a place where you don't want to be.
Yeah.
But that's the research job, is to find what is that place and to make you go there, because chances are this is where we're going to get the best results, by the way.
Yeah.
It's the low hanging fruit is always that place where you don't want to be. And we'll see it real fast now.
Yeah. Yeah, the dude said he'd rather get kicked in the legs 20 times than do another sled harness. I was like, yeah, another one.
Yeah, like, by the way, I don't agree with that at all because that hurts.
Well, and I heard that, and I was like,
150 kilos.
I was like, dude, I would probably rather have my legs amputated than let that man.
No,
kick me
I'll
in
do
the
10
legs.
sets on the harness instead of getting kicked. Do you know how much that hurts?
Yeah.
Like, you must really hate the harness to say that shit, but yeah.
Well, it's good, but I think there's a lot of, what's the word? Like, teaching isn't maybe the term, but letting them experience those changes in state.
Yeah.
And you're able to explain it with these simple OS tools in a way that they understand the context within a fight very easily.
Right.
When you show them, you make them die out, and then you explain it. You're explaining them what happens right now if you're in a fight and you feel like this, and they're basically like, "Oh, I'll get my fucking head kicked off."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll get folded up and tapped right
Yep.
now.
Yep.
And that's the point: is you take them there, and then you make them correct that state. You teach them that place. It becomes familiar territory.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. People don't understand. People like that don't fight always bitch at the TV going like, oh, how come he's not doing this? How come he's not doing that? Because you don't understand what it feels like to be fatigued in a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like drowning probably is, I know from, I've almost drowned as a kid. I don't think it was nearly as bad as a feeling, if I remember correctly, as being in the jiu-jitsu where I can't open my hands and like you pumping battery acid. This is the most helpless feeling I've ever had in my life, was being tired in a jiu-jitsu. That's not even MMA. Yeah. There's not even punching. That was just a jiu-jitsu fight. Yeah. And it's such a, in a competition, It was the most horrible feeling I had. Second to the first jiu-jitsu session I ever had, where I panicked and the guy was like, whoa! And because I probably changed colors. But those moments are terrifying. But imagine if you can master that. And so we can recreate that in training. If you master those feelings, then there's not much that can get to you after that.
Yeah.
But that way, that works for life too. I still think if you go to those places, you're better suited for life.
Yeah, for sure.
It does something to you. But I don't think you've hit that with them yet because of their fights coming.
Yeah, they're coming up pretty soon. So like the German fighter with Alex, it was great. So he had a fight in December. Then I kind of gave Andy the protocol to go with training, and they did a great job. And it was awesome. I mean, mentally, you just saw the guy get hit, and Alex just kept going all 12 rounds. So then I was like, okay, so now we have the mindset there. So we need to just get him stronger so he can actually just knock out the guy. Yeah. And so we worked on that, and
punching
so
power.
I mean,
it's you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
But at least you make him stronger and less likely to get grounded down. Stronger legs, stronger. Yeah.
So it was. I think it'll be awesome.
But being stronger within the chain, like I wish people would understand that stronger the deadlift is not what we're talking about.
No.
Like I think that's the problem we see in strength and conditioning. It's like, oh, if you have a higher deadlift, you're stronger. No, performance box. Maybe it means your skill went up.
Yeah.
Right.
But muscle capacity for a deadlift might not be what we need. We try to make people stronger within the chain. And to me, the best thing is a heavy sandbag carry. Yeah. Like if you can carry a really heavy sandbag, chances are just picking it up and carrying, you worked most muscles in your chains. There might be, if you can do heavy sandbag carries, a few squats and a clean and press, I think you've worked every muscle in the chain in the body. Like that doesn't mean there won't be some specific imbalances we can work out, but overall, that's the type of work that yields a structure, a good structure. After that, you can start playing about looking good naked and everything, but those things should not be confused. Right. And I see too much of that. I see people misunderstanding deadlift and strength, misunderstanding, sports versus training. Like there's a number of things and so there's a chaos there that leads to the wrong results because either they go, well, objective versus constraint. Oh, better deadlift, I'm stronger. No, not for grappling. It doesn't work like that. If I train like this, then I'll be better. No, because you train in autopilot, which doesn't give you the results that you need to be in autopilot during your fight. Like there's so many different things in principles that have to be addressed that I don't see being addressed.
And you don't want to be training you don't want to be surprised by something that's going on midway through your deadlift. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
So what I like doing when I was seeing Richard's sessions is he is making the tools that they use fight back a little bit. Yeah. Meaning they'll be on the harness and Richard will sit back there and watch him drop a band over the back of the sled they were pulling just to make it a little harder halfway through. Yeah. Like fuck it, or if they don't put in there or they're not pushing hard enough, Richard will stand in there and he'll push back just a little bit because it's not this smooth line to a finish. It's all of a sudden you boom.
And what happens when your mind goes, oh shit.
Yeah.
And like if you've been training with us and Richard did that to you, you'll know, but you're pushing really hard on the harness and you start to get a groove going and someone sits on it or whatever, physically it hurts, but not nearly as much as it does mentally. Mentally you go, man, and you can't stop, but that can break you mentally. Yeah. We've seen people going, oh, fuck it.
They'll just stop.
Mentally,
And at that moment, if there's some sweaty motherfucker trying to rip your head off, and you're surprised, that's a rough game to be in. So the preparation that you're doing, I mean, sandbag carry, if you're doing sandbag carries, sandbag even cleans, things like that, those are tools that fight
and they hit you in the lip
a little bit.
You know, like you clean the sandbag, it hits you in the lip, or half your face is red.
Well, the best I have them carry like this, I just start pushing it.
And then you go sideways.
The tall one. I get underneath me, he doesn't see me, I'm like,
No, but like you have the sandbag here and it presses on your face. Try to press a sandbag while the stuff is busting your lip. That alone fucks with you. That's the thing with a barbell. It's clean. Usually you don't hit your throat with it. Most of the time. But you know what I mean? Like it's all those pretty movements where you can get out of the way and everything. I'm like, but in real life, you don't. Life is a sandbag. It's not a barbell.
Yeah, the smothering effect of the sandbag, I think, carries over in my opinion, much more to sport than anything I did with the barbell. That's for sure.
Life
even
is
for
a
things
sandbag.
like football, things like that, you're moving around things that don't want to be fucking moved around. A barbell is kind of meant to be moved around.
Right. The sandbag fights back.
Yeah.
The barbell never does.
Yeah.
Like it's so there's an entire concept there that I think is being drawn out more and more by those bullshitters that are coming with the, what we're going to call that, the banded split jerk box snatch.
Front elevated.
I don't even know what name we need, but those guys are selling you bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, you need to understand this. They're selling you bullshit, and the reason they do that, it's first of all because it works, because you're so fucking dumb that you're actually going to buy this shit thinking it's going to make you better. But it's because they don't know the needed principles to make people better. So they come up with something that is very easy to do, which is some bullshit exercise that looks good on social media. There's an entire industry now that is changing because of social media, because they know how to sell with that.
Yeah.
That's what drives me the craziest, is social media is changing the way we train people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because more and more of them are proposing more and more complex bullshit to differentiate from each other. So more complex movement, more complex percentages and stuff like that. So social media is changing the way we train.
Yeah.
That is dangerous. Let's put it this way.
It's the constant progression of skill rather than letting the fucking human evolve with the same fucking movement.
Right.
Like every day we do sandbag carries, and guess what? Every day they're becoming a better human being.
Right, because they have to fight against the sandbag. We usually fight back. It's uncomfortable. It's not pretty. It's shitty. And that's usually what fighting is like. That's usually what training should be like. That's usually what life is. Let's be honest. Like, the softness of Western society is killing us all. Yeah. And social media, to me, is just paying the piper. Like, social media today is just, we finally hit the moment where we have to pay the piper. Like, the system has gone out of control so much that it's starting to bite back.
Yeah.
Like, because the system now is not about humans anymore, it's about the system. We have to pay the piper. That's why I see social media. Don't fall into that trap. Yeah. Do not buy your training off of social media.
But if you'd like to buy training off of strongfit.com,
click here. Yeah.
Subscribe over here.
Yeah, exactly.
And comment down here.
Exactly. And the fictional template is over there.
Hit the we got what's that? Make sure you ring that bell.
Yeah,
hit the subscribe. And leave us a 5-star review.
And but don't buy from anybody else.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining us, Rich. I think it's real good. It's been, having seen a couple of those sessions, I was like, we got to get in to talk about it. We didn't want to give away too much candy with who the guys are. They got big fights coming up and stuff like that. But I think when we see after these fights, you'll have kind of a decent chunk of time to get some real progress. And I think we'll have some cool stuff to show you guys from that.
Yeah, and we want the results to speak for themselves.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
Like what Richard has been doing, you'll see what happens. And you'll see, I want people to see the progress on those guys, even like, muscle density wise and all that stuff, just out of the work Richard has been doing.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing is we don't want to have to tell you, they can tell you.
Yeah.
And they'll show you.
Yeah, they'll show you.
We'll let that
they'll do even better than tell you, they'll show you.
Because the last thing you want to be is the person who, you come do some strength stuff for the fighter, and you go, "It's my fighter." It's like, no. Those boys put in some fucking work.
Those boys are already fighters. Yeah. Those boys are already good.
So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye. We'll kind of have more stuff about the fighters or stories and things like that as it goes along. We don't want to over-educate their competition when they got fights right around the corner.
Absolutely.
So you just stay tuned to our end and don't tell anybody our secrets. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you here next week.
Cool.
Thanks for joining us, Richard.
Later, guys.
We'll see you. If you want to support the podcast, head on over to podcast.strongfit.com. There you could donate or join the YouTube channel. Also, go to strongfit.com. There you're going to find our online courses, education, and all of our seminar dates should be there as well. Head on over to strongfitlibrary.com to keep up to date on everything Julian's been working on. And follow StrongFit1 on Instagram and Tyler F. and Stone.